comic book classroom introduction, so bear with me. When Denver Comic Con was first dreamed up, the founders wanted to ensure that today's kids get to experience the same joy that comic books brought us growing up. That dream is being accomplished through the funding of your ticket purchase to Denver Comic Con. Your ticket purchase funds our nonprofit educational program, Comic Book Classroom. Like our corral that you see up front, Comic Book Classroom teaches kids about reading, visual storytelling, dialogue, conflict resolution, and basic drawing. It brings in professional creators to show kids that making comics can be a real job someday. And the coolest of all is that the kids create their own comic book at the end. Dan Connor is a teacher who brought in Denver's Comic Book Classroom after-school program. It worked great for Dan because his kids like to draw, and they didn't always like to write. Dan says that Comic Book Classroom not only helped his students with their reading, but they also got way more interested in writing about their comics. The program also helped bring a lot of different kids together, which helps not only with their sense of belonging, but also with their satisfaction in being in school in the first place. So now that you've learned a little bit about Comic Book Classroom, how can you help? First of all, you can donate to Comic Book Classroom through our donation stations, by scanning QR codes throughout the con, or by visiting us at www.comicbookclassroom.org. That helps us keep the curriculum, supplies, and teachers free for kids in schools. Secondly, you can come help Comic Book Classroom directly by volunteering with us or by donating stuff like art supplies, computers, comic books, or office supplies. Thirdly, you can spread the word, not just about comics, but how art and comics and reading and writing all help kids perform better in schools. Thank you for learning a bit about Comic Book Classroom. Now let's get on with the show. So, anyway, like I said, my name is Kelly Cannon with the Denver Public Library. These are my co-conspirators. We have Adelina Escobar, Melissa Koo, that one girl, Emily Paris Green, and Becker Parker Stubb. I forgot your name and clinched, and then remembered as I said that one girl. So, I've known her for years, which is funny. Anyway, we're talking about powerful women wearing clothes, which is very exciting, right? When I first set this challenge to my colleagues, we thought it would be really, really easy, right? Because all of us read science fiction and fantasy. It's awesome, and we just thought it'd be a really great research project. But what we found is that it wasn't like that. My requirement was that the books pass the Bechdel Test, which basically means, like, are they women? Do they have names? Do they speak to each other about something other than guys? And you think that would be, like, not a big deal, but it turns out that it is. And a lot of our favorite books ended up getting vetoed. Like, we sort of sounded like these sort of grunting ogres. We'd be like, oh, what about this? Oh, we can't do this book. What about that book? Oh, we can't do it. Oh, right? And people started asking, are you guys okay? You guys make it sound like you're okay. But anyway, eventually we did find some books with women that have better armor than this. And yeah, I know the boys in Skyrim also wear this when they do the hide armor thing, but it kind of slayed me. Also, don't Google terrible female armor at work. I'm just gonna put it out there. Not something you do at work. So anyway, what we're gonna do is talk about some of our favorite books. Now we have a really short time, so if you feel like we missed something, either tell us or check the bookmark, or tell us anyway. So it's not like, okay, I'm just gonna stop. So the book that I want to talk about first is Thief's Covenant by R.I. Marmel. I loved this book, it rocked my world, and I'm not really sure that a lot of people have heard about it yet. I keep telling people at the library about it, and they keep saying like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, this book starts out on the worst day of Adrienne Satie's life. She is clinging to the top of this, church thing. And below her are the bodies of all her friends. We don't really know why this has happened, it's just sort of, you get dropped in. Anyway, Adrienne Satie has several different sort of personas that she uses. She has one where she's a member of nobility, and she uses this persona to case the joint, so when she comes back as her thief version of herself, Widdershins, she can then rob them. The thing I love about this book is really interesting. Their take on religion is that the God is only as powerful as believers. So if a God has a ton of believers, they're more powerful than, say, the God that's living in Widdershin's head, whose name is Olgan. Now, you think that having a God living in your head would be really useful, but she finds it really annoying most of the time. Sometimes he can help her, sometimes he just mocks her. which is great. You know, we all need voices in our head doing that. Anyway, she's rather unpopular. There's some people in the Thieves Guild who would like her dead. The city guard would also like her dead because she might possibly be up to something. And then there's this other group of people that she doesn't even know about, but they also want her dead. And she's rather annoyed about that because she at least wants to know that she's earned the death wish, right? So she's very irreverent, which I loved. This book is told in a series of flashbacks, which is really kind of rough, the first 50 pages, and then you get it, and then you're frothing at the mouth because it's so awesome. There is a sequel to this book called False Covenant, and I loved these books. They felt a little different than a lot of the fantasy I read. The next book that I want to talk about is Akasa Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. Sorry if I mispronounced your name there, lady. This is a book for sort of younger readers, but as an adult, I also really enjoyed it. This is about Sunny, who doesn't really seem to fit in anywhere. She's a daughter of Nigerian parents who was born in the United States, and then they all decided to move back to Nigeria. She is an albino, so she's really sensitive to the sun. She also loves to play soccer, which is not the proper thing for a young African lady to do. So when she starts school in Nigeria, she's really shocked because she actually makes friends for the first time. Her friends teach her that she's what's called a free agent, and that's basically an untrained witch. So as she goes and trains with her friends and witchdom, I know I should have a better word, she finds that all of these things that have made her different and sort of made her so alone her whole life are the things that give her power. And the thing I love about it is like her uniqueness and her oddness is what gives her the strength to kind of face this serial killer that is taking the land. Now, I don't want to go to the school that she goes to because their first sort of essay test thing is for she and her friends to find the serial killer and then stop him. So I can't handle that kind of pressure. Anyway, I really liked this book because it's written by a woman who's lived in Nigeria, so the texture of the book feels really real to me. And because I don't know a lot about Nigeria, it was really wonderful to kind of read and explore. The next book I want to talk about is my favorite book ever in the universe. Forgive me while I flip my foot up. This is Sakura by Garth Nix. And first I want to preface this by saying that Tim Curry reads the audiobook of this, and if any of you like to listen to audiobooks, you get to listen to Tim Curry, and he's so freaking hilarious, it's great. But you can read it too if you like. Anyway, this is a book. This is a book about Sabriel, who her mother died in childbirth, and she's sort of raised by her father for a while, and then he decides to send her to this other country to live. Now, imagine England sort of cut in half by this giant wall. Above the wall is this country called the Old Kingdom, and they can do magic up there. Below the wall is a country called Ancelstier, which is sort of like 1910s England, and they don't believe in magic, but it exists, of course. So anyway, she's raised close to the wall so she can still sort of do magic, and something happens to her dad as she's about to graduate high school. And she's like, sweet, adventure! I can do all this awesome magic, I get a sword, this is gonna be great! Like, who doesn't think that? I think that like every morning, I'm like, sweet. I have a sword, actually. And when my friend gave it to me, this is off topic, but when my friend gave it to me, like, I carried it home on my backpack and I kept like pulling it out a little bit as I'm riding my bike. Like, ooh, I could totally ride by like a watermelon and cut it. I didn't, because I was like, what if the police asked my parents? Anyway, Sabriel doesn't have this problem, because there's no police in the Old Kingdom. So she goes to the Old Kingdom, and she discovers that everything she thought she knew is completely academic, right? So she learns that the magic she knows isn't really as powerful as she thought. She's being pursued by this sort of possibly dead guy, actually dead guy. It's sort of chasing. Okay. Undead. Forgive me. The politically correct term is undead.
Challenge, if you please.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Anyway, she's chased by this guy, and she ends up making it to her dad's house, which has like all these great supplies and the most unhelpful, sarcastic cat ever. And the reason you know this is because it can speak, which I'm really glad cats can't talk. So in the process of doing all this, the thing I loved about it is that she has to use so much ingenuity. I mean, she has like this much information in a world that requires this much, but she's able to figure out, she's able to do it. The cat, Magat, I'll give the cat a name, the cat's Magat, and it's awesome. The series is really great. There's a fourth book that's finally going to be coming out, theoretically, at the end of this year. Yeah, is it the end of this year? I don't know. Like both of us, when we talk about it for a week and doing I have to go to a bathroom dance because it was so exciting to us. Anyway, that's a great book. I'm gonna stop. Our next person talking is Adelina.
I'm gonna stand up for a second so everybody can see me since I'm a little bit behind the podium. I love humorous books. I love satire and parody. And so I'm going to talk about some of the women in Terry Pratchett's Discworld. First one is a set of witches, the Lanker witches. And I'm going to talk about Weird Sisters, the very first book. It's a parody of Hamlet and Macbeth, keeps all the funny bits. Kind of makes fun of all the drama. You're introduced to three witches, the crone, the mother, and the maiden. Nobody likes being called any of those. Nobody wants to have a title like that, especially crone. Nobody likes that one. Granny Weatherwax, we're introduced to her. She is respected and feared by the people. Basically, Discworld over. She's intimidating. She's the leader of these witches, but don't call her that because it's not real. She'll stare you down, especially if you call her crone. She'll stare you down and try and suck out your brain. At least you'll think it's melting. She believes in herself and her abilities and gives people what she thinks they need, not what they think they need. You also got Nanny Og, who's the mother. She's been married 3 times, has 15 kids, has many grandkids, many great-grandkids, and she's got a talent for getting along with anybody. You meet her for 15 minutes and you feel like you've known her your whole life. But don't get into a drinking contest with her. She will drink you under the table and then sing funny songs and make you turn bright red. Then the maiden is Magrat Garlic. She believes in occult jewelry, covens, bubbling cauldrons, and she's the junior witch, the novice, the maiden. And she's kind of silly. And both of the older witches think she's very silly. But she has real power, and she's actually a very strong person. The king gets murdered by his cousin, Duke Fairmont. This sounds very much like him. And the king's son has to flee so he can survive. He's given to witches, and they give him to a theater group. So he becomes an actor over time. And they know that he has to come back to save the kingdom from this evil king. And the kingdom is angry because of the treatment of this new king. His land is angry, the subjects are angry, and the witches realize that they made a mistake. It's going to be 15 years until this kid can actually come back and save the kingdom. So they do a spell, and 15 years just suddenly pops by. The kingdom gets frozen. Everything outside the kingdom goes 15 years. The kid lives outside the kingdom. He gets 15 years older, and we move on with the story. And Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og and Magrat cast a spell during the play, to find who actually killed the old king. And they set everything back to right, and the right person becomes king. There are 2 more books in this series. Witches Abroad, which they leave their area, and then Lords and Ladies. I'm just trying to peek at the slide behind. Tiffany Aiken. These are great books because they actually speak to young women, strong young women. She's an apprentice witch. She comes and fights the evil fairy queen and has to get back her baby brother, and has these little men, these wee free men, that are about 4 inches tall and blue and angry at the world. And there's a ton of them. So with the help of the wee free men, apprentice witch Tiffany Aiken goes about becoming a witch. So that was Wee Free Men, and then you can continue to enjoy 3 more books as she grows up. The Hat of Full Sky, Winter Smith, and I Shall Wear Midnight. She goes from being 9 to being 16 in these books.
It's really important though. So I am starting out talking about a book by Maria B. Snyder, who, if you've never read anything by her, you should go out and consume all of it because it's really great writing. In Touch of Power is the first in her most recent series, and in it we meet Avery, who is a healer. She has special powers and she can heal people, and when she heals people, she does it basically by taking away whatever they have into her own body. So if they have like a cut on their arm, her arm gets cut open, but she can heal incredibly quickly. The only problem is a couple years ago, a terrible plague decimated the population, and it's rumored that the plague was started by healers. So now healers are hunted down throughout and pretty much executed just for being who they are.
I was trying to make it better, I swear.
So being a healer, part of it is you're compelled to help people. So even though Avery is in hiding, she keeps going out and healing people, and then she gets ratted out because she helped somebody, and then they throw her in jail, and she often escapes. But this time it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and the King's Guard is coming to take her away and execute her tomorrow. But luckily for her, a prince in a neighboring kingdom has the plague and they need a healer. So there's a group of people who come to rescue or kidnap her and take her back to the kingdom, but they have to convince Avery that she wants to save this guy. And so the story kind of follows her and Carrick, who's the friend of the prince who came to rescue her. But it's a great story. Of course, there's lots of adventure and a little bit of romance. But Maria, she really sneaks the romance in, like you don't think it's happening, and then you're like, oh my god, it's a love story. But they're really good. My next book is Serafina by Rachel Hartman. And this is a series a lot like Kelly's first one, where I just can't believe people aren't reading this book more. Like the fact that there's ever a copy sitting on the shelf at the library is, I'm aghast. I can't believe it. So, the writing was incredible. It's written by Rachel Hartman. She was a debut author with this, and it takes place in the land of Gored. There's an extra D, I don't know if it's silent or not. And dragons and humans have populated this world for millennia and have always been at war. But 40 years ago, a peace was garnered, and it's been very tenuous ever since. Part of the tricky part is that dragons can appear human, though they are intensely logical, like a certain pointy-eared character. But to identify themselves, they have to wear bells. So if you're walking around and you hear somebody tinkling, they might be a dragon. And they might also want to eat you, because humans are really tasty to dragons. Part of the problem. But Serafina has just got the job of a lifetime. She is going to be the tutor, the music teacher for the princess of this kingdom. And unfortunately, at the same time, like the same day she gets this job, there's somebody discovered murdered in the castle in a very draconian way. And Serafina gets caught up trying to solve the puzzle of who committed this crime, and she also has a terrible secret that she's keeping that if it comes out could mean the end of her. I think that there's mystery, there's tension, once again there's a little bit of romance, terror, music, it was just everything. This book was incredible. Go out, buy it, come to the library, get it, we'd love to lend it to you. It's a fabulous book. My third book about strong females, now with clothes, is in the His Fair Assassins series. The first one is Grave Mercy, written by R.L. Lefevers. Ismay is a turnip farmer's daughter. When her mother was pregnant with her, she tried to have an abortion and she ate some poison herbs. They didn't quite work. And when Ismay is born, she has terrible scarring on her back that in this world reveals her as kind of being Death's daughter. So her mother dies in childbirth and she's raised by her father who hates her every second he sees her. So she is sold to a man for 3 silver pennies to be his wife. And on her wedding night, her husband discovers the scarring and is terrified. And he locks her up in the basement and he's gonna get the town magistrate to execute her. But through a series of events, she gets rescued and sent to this very special convent where they are dedicated to Saint Mortain, who is basically death. And in this convent, the sisters train the novices, I suppose, in the art and craft of death so that they can act as death's handmaidens. These girls are all able to see, they call it a mark of death, and it's kind of like a shadow on your skin, and that means you're gonna get it. And it's their duty and their job to see that death's chosen ones are ushered through to the other side. Ismay gets sent to a kingdom where some very evil people are in charge, and she's kind of tasked with figuring out how and why and when Saint Mortain is going to choose that guy. It's a really good book. And there's the second one that was even better.
Okay, so this is Huntress by Melinda Lowe. This book has at its center not just one strong woman, but 2, and the bonus is that they fall in love. So, a lot to love about this book. Tyson is a sage. She's been studying at the Academy of Sages, and she, in the ways of mysticism and magic, she is just learning to come into her powers to manipulate the Earth's energies to get what she needs. Katie has been studying at the Sage Academy also, but she does not have the talent for the magics. Her talents go towards throwing knives, using her bow, and protecting Tyson. They are sent on a quest to meet the Fairy Queen and to find out what has been happening in both of their worlds. With there's been a great environmental devastation, and they're sent to the Fairy Queen to find out what is going on. Everybody thinks that this is a suicide mission, that they won't come back, that they won't solve the problems, and the world will die. So they face a lot of challenges on their quest. One of those challenges being the fact that they are falling in love with each other, but sages take a vow of celibacy once they are finished with their schooling. They have to make a lot of very difficult choices, facing their foes, facing what their love means, and make lots of just difficult choices while, fighting the bad guys and wolves. And just as a shout out to Melinda Lowe, all of her books could have been on this list. She wrote a retelling of Cinderella called Ash, which is just beautiful, a beautiful book about grief and love. And she has a science fiction novel, particularly if you're an X-Files fan, called Adaptation. which is wonderful, and the sequel to that is called Inheritance, and that is coming out this fall. So look for Melinda Lowe's. All of her books are amazing. Santa Olivia by Jacqueline Carey. Jacqueline Carey is very known for her Cushiel's Dart series. This is a duo of books that are not related to those. Lou Garon is the child of a mother who had an affair with a soldier in a small border town that doesn't officially exist. Somewhere between Texas and Mexico, there's this no man's land that soldiers occupy, and nobody gets in but the soldiers, and nobody gets out. When Lou is born, they realize that her father was a genetically modified soldier, and she realizes she has some powers that other people don't have. When her mom dies, she gets sent to the local orphanage, and she kind of takes on the role of leader of the local orphans. They become vigilantes, and they start by playing pranks around town, but end up really righting some bad wrongs in the name of Santa Olivia, their local saint. Lou hears through the grapevine that the leader of the local military will give a ticket for 2 out to anybody who can beat the local army boxing champion in combat. So she decides she's going to train, and she's going to get a ticket out for her brother. So she starts training at the age of 16, and that starts her journey of learning more and more about what her own power is and whether she will ever get out of this town. The sequel to this one is called Saints Astray. So the last one I have is the Why the Last Man, a graphic novel series by Brian K. Vaughan. It's a complete series, so the great thing about it is you can sit down and read the whole thing in one sitting. So in a series about the last man on Earth, one hopes to find a bunch of very strong women, and one does. The focus, of course, is on the last man, Yorick Brown, and his monkey Ampersand, but they are surrounded by and opposed by many strong women along their journey to figure out what killed all the men and can anything be done about it. The first woman we meet in this series is Agent 355. She is of the secret society, the Culper Ring, and she is sent to Yorick to try to get him to a scientist who can maybe figure out what's going on, what killed all the men, why are you different. So she protects him throughout the years, and their relationship becomes very complex, and she kills a lot of people. Then we meet Dr. Allison Mann, who is a geneticist with a specialty in cloning. She becomes one of Yorick's and Agent 355's travel companions. She has secrets of her own as to what she knows about the plague. Yorick's girlfriend Beth, who he proposed to right before all the men dropped dead, she's in Australia. His goal is basically to get to her. She has her own storyline as to what happens to her in Australia while everybody's looking for her. And Yorick's sister Hero also has her own storyline. Their father was a big fan of Shakespeare, hence the names. We also have a lot of really interesting women who are trying to kill Yorick, including the Israeli military, which became the most powerful military on Earth when all the men died, because women there have the compulsory service, and they're in leadership positions. They're ready to just keep going on as it was. There's also a group of newfangled Amazons who think that the men must have died for a good reason, and if they hear rumors about a man, it must be stopped and he must be shot. So a great journey, lots of interesting people, and like I said, I like that it's a complete series, so you can know how it ends.
So just quickly, while we're on the subject of Brian K. Vaughan, I have to give a shout out to Saga, which is his newest series. There are only 2 so far, so we're all going to have to wait and see how it ends. But it features all sorts of awesome characters, including a woman soldier who is giving birth on the first page, a crazy spider assassin lady, a sassy teenage ghost. It has stunning artwork by Fiona Staples, who is actually here at Comic-Con today. She'll be upstairs in the big room at 11 o'clock, so it's great. I'm going to go ahead and admit that I'm a lightweight when it comes to reading science fiction. Sometimes it's a little dry for me, sometimes I don't really have the science in my brain. But the great thing about The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord is that that doesn't matter. I read it and it knocked my socks off. She takes all of these familiar science fiction and fantasy concepts, most notably the destruction of the home planet of an alien race of superlogical low-emotion beings, which may sound familiar to some people, and she sort of weaves them all together and she anchors them with this kick-ass female character named Grace De La Rue. Grace is a government worker who has been tasked with working of the remaining members of this alien race to basically find new mates for them to help carry on their species. She is this irreverent, funny, goofy, playful person who is also really exceptionally smart. And at no point during the book is anyone like, hey, goofy girl, I'm so amazed that you're also smart. Like, these things have to be mutually exclusive. She has a male counterpart who is a member of this alien race that has no planet. They work together, they become really close, they're attracted to each other. There's all this thrilling flirting and sexual chemistry, and all their coworkers are like, when are you guys gonna hook up? And they both explicitly are like, being friends is more important. And it's so remarkable to me that you can have characters that totally have the hots for each other, and yet they're both like, pants would be cool, but being friends is the most important thing. The icing on the cake for me in this book is that Grace actually paraphrases something that I tell people when they ask me, why feminism? Why are you a feminist? Grace says, I am not responsible for any foolishness that a man might care to perpetrate on my behalf. So, amen to that, amen to this book, it's fantastic. Life After Life is not science fiction. It has one premise that could be kind of considered fantasy. It's sort of the basis of the book. But I wanted to talk about it because this is the best book I've read this year. Hands down, it has one of the greatest female characters I've ever had the pleasure to meet. Ursula Todd is born in 1910 with her umbilical cord wrapped around her throat. She dies without taking a breath. Ursula Todd is born in 1910 with her umbilical cord wrapped around her throat. The doctor removes the cord. She grows to age 5. She goes to the ocean on a holiday. She drowns. Ursula Todd is born in 1910 with umbilical cord wrapped around her throat. She goes to the ocean on holiday when she's 5. She almost drowns. And that winter, she falls out the window of her parents' home. Ursula Todd has this apparently unlimited number of lives. She lives, she dies over and over again without even really knowing why, without really knowing why this is even happening. Sometimes she has a sense of deja vu. She tells her psychotherapist that time for her isn't circular, it's a palimpsest. She literally is a blank page that is being rewritten over and over again. This book takes place at the end of World War I, beginning of World War II. It's primarily set in London and Germany, so there are clues that the reader can determine, why maybe there's something she's supposed to do. That's why she keeps reliving her life over and over again. But the book is not even really about that. It's about this woman and the things she does, the choices she makes, her family, her friends. It's so well constructed that I think you could read it and then read it again a week later and have all these moments of like, aha, this makes sense. This detail that I missed the first time, I totally see how it ties together. I read about 125 books a year. This is the best one I've read this year so far. I loved it. Daughters of the North. This is a book that's told from the perspective of a woman named Sister. Sister lives in dystopian England, and one of the really great factors of this dystopia is that women of childbearing age have to be fitted with an IUD. They are also required, if a member of the ruling authority should ask, to prove that they still have this implant in place, which you can all imagine what that means. This has just happened to Sister. She's pretty pissed off about it. Her husband doesn't really think that it's that big of a deal, but she has started thinking about these rumors that she's heard, reports over the years, of this isolated farm that's set in the hills to the north, women only. These women are not civilians, they're not members of society, they're completely self-sufficient. They grow their own crops, they have their own animals, make their own clothes. They also have weapons. First of all, I love reading about like animal husbandry and self-sufficient farming, so that part of it is really, really awesome. She does such a good job of presenting it very realistically. Like, there's nothing but gruel to eat for breakfast most days with like a pat of butter on top, but you're going to eat that gruel because you're going to be so worn out because this is such hard work. It's really interesting to see the evolution of Sister through the book. Most of the characters at the farm, these are women who are practically archetypes. They're static. They are who they are when Sister meets them. And she's the only one who kind of levels up through the book. She starts off as being this kind of get-along girl who's upset but doesn't know how to change it. And by the end, I mean, she's got a machine gun. She's taken towns by force. She's a rebel. She's this person to be reckoned with. This book won the James Tiptree Jr. Award when it was published in 2007, and the Tiptree Award is named for an author named Alice E. Sheldon, who wrote a lot of really awesome science fiction novels under that pseudonym, basically to prove that, you know, if you like these books when you thought they were written by a man, they're still just as valid. Women can also write good books. So I think it's just worth saying that anything that wins this award, at the end of the day, it's going to be something that's totally worth reading. It's going to be something that you read and think about for a long time afterwards, which is what happened with me with this book. It's quite good.
Cool. So that's all of the books that we have. Well, we have some also rants because we couldn't control ourselves. But before we do that, I wanted to know, do you guys have any questions, or does anyone want to talk about? Someone already does. That's awesome.
My question, without giving away too much fun, because I want to read as many of these as I can, but did you run across any women anti-heroes? Because they just seem so few and far between in your reading.
The question was, did we find any women anti-heroes?
Can I address that just as far as Daughters of the North without really giving it away? The way that Sister changes, I think the book is almost asking you, how far is too far? What is acceptable for people to push back? When does it change from rebellion and become terrorism? So, you know, in a way, at the end of the book, you could almost see Sister and her compatriots as anti-heroes.
Yeah, that's all anything to add. I saw that you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just remember another one that was earlier. If you read Divergent,
Yes. He asked if we read Divergent, and we have.
this school year, my teacher said, we have a book club at our school, and so I got this book, and it's like this big, and I love the book. So I sit there and I start reading it, and automatically I'm hooked. And I read the first book, and then I just went out and I bought the second book, and the third one comes out in October, and I'm so excited.
So anyway, a definite recommendation. If you haven't, like, he gave a better recommendation than we did. Also, for those of you who are still like teenagers, we have a book club at the Central Library called the Probably Awesome Book Club, which I named the Probably Awesome Book Club thinking it would change, and then they liked the name, so it's the Probably Awesome Book Club. Anyway, it's actually awesome. And if you want to come and hang out with us, we would love to have you. Is there
Well, I was
any
going to
questions?
say, while you're waiting for the book coming out in October, there's another book out right now called The Testing by Joelle Charbonneau. Awesome. I thought it was better than Divergent. Just throwing that one down. Boom.
His mom also works with my daughter, Rachel's field.
Yeah, she's one of our book members.
Yeah, so, he's my next door neighbor. So, he gets all the opening books, and he's like, Max, you gotta read this. I'm like, okay.
Dude, you have like the best neighbor ever. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
What were some of the favorites that you were disappointed to discover failed the Bechdel test?
We all get so sad.
Okay, I have to push them out of my mind.
Okay, so there's this book that's out right now called The Quantum Thief, and then it has a sequel, and it's by this guy named Hanu Ramanujan. Yeah.
That's exactly how you say it.
Yeah, especially with the
I think it's how you spell it.
yeah. But anyway, it's one of my favorite science fiction books that I've read in a really long time. It's hard science fiction, but it's also like crime noir. So the first book takes place on Mars, and Mars is kind of Frenchy and fancy. And what happens is that the main character, whose name I forgot, I'm sorry, is rescued from this prison. But the problem is that he's forgotten all his memories. So he goes to Mars to get his memories back. Well, on Mars, you don't have money, you have time. So as you go through life, you sort of pay people in time, and then eventually you run out of time. They put you into like a machine that then works on the planet, like this big, like, it's not as cool as Mecca. But eventually you're sort of reborn. So this whole thought of like, what is life worth? What is time worth? It was just amazing, and it blew me away, and I sort of am frothing in the mouth right now just thinking about it. That was one for me that I really wanted to talk about the women in it, because they were kind of cooler than the dude, a little bit. I'm not just biased, they were just really kind of cool. But that was one for me. So,
Kind of anything by Kristen Cashore doesn't quite pass the Bechdel test. I mean, like, Graceling, what's the main character's name? Katza? Katza talks to Poe, who's a guy all the time. Like, she's this really kick-ass, like, literally ass-kicking character. But, I mean, she talks to this guy all the time. She doesn't ever really talk to other women, and that's kind of one of the criteria. It's a great book, though. Great book.
yeah, really awesome.
Anything by Kristen Cashore is great.
In the back?
Sorry, I have a question, and also there's Fire, I think is the other one.
Yeah, it's Fire and then the last
And
one
then
is
Bitterwood.
Yeah, it's in the same universe, it's a different character though, and I actually prefer that one. But I missed the beginning of the panel, so I'm sorry to ask, but these aren't like just sort of the ones that you sometimes get in sci-fi that's like really kick-ass characters and they're cool, but they don't have any depth and they're just...
Yeah, that was one of our rules, is that they would actually have depth and function as humans in the right crazy, right? Function as humans in the world. So we wanted to give people a feeling of like, this is science fiction, I can exist in this universe. You know, okay, so I'm gonna quote Mass Effect because I can't control myself, but like one thing I loved about Mass Effect and fanship is that you could be whoever you were, and it didn't matter. Like no one ever gave a really crap about being a woman because she would break them. That was like a universe I wanted to live in. And there's so few universes, I think, that exist like that you read about that you're like, dude, I want to live there. But that was the thing. I'm sort of going through our also rans right now, so we can just keep answering questions.
Yeah, one of the places where a lot of strong women characters have been popping up is in urban fantasy.
Yeah.
Are there any of those that you would recommend?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually for me, that was kind of where I ran into trouble with passing the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Because like the Rosemary and Rue series, Kelly and I both wanted to talk about that, but I guess she has a fetch. Does that count if you talk to yourself?
But she turns to a different person.
It's true. She does become her own person. And I mean, there were lots of women characters in it, but it seems like she spends most of her time with, anyway. Like Kitty in the Midnight Hour, that doesn't quite pass because she doesn't really have any female friends. Like they're all guys. And she is a strong, awesome female character. But once again, there's just not really, she kind of talks to her mom like on the phone every once in a while. But let's see, other urban fantasies, strong females.
Question.
Yeah.
What did you think of it? There was this argument like the last couple of weeks, where I think it was Claire Lasoud made this whole rigmarole about whether or not we should want our characters to be likable and read them. As a librarian, were you like, I don't even know what you're talking about, I like likable characters, or what did you make of it?
Well, I think as people, we want to connect to someone. I know when I was growing up, I didn't really have any friends, and I was really very close to my family. So the way I survived my childhood was comics and books and art. And I desperately needed that connection. I think there's some of us that exist that really need that connection. Yeah. I think that non-likable characters are harder to take, because maybe there's something about them that you admire, but then there's things about them that you don't. But I think that they can teach us just as much as the good ones, and sometimes even more, because sometimes you have to look at the not good parts of yourself too to get better.
Well, and I think that kind of also speaks to the anti-heroine that you were talking about there. And I think that the second book in the His Fair Assassins series it follows a character that you're not really supposed to like. I mean, ultimately, I think at the end, there's enough revealed about her that you see why she is the way she is, but she's not a likable person. She is not, you wouldn't want her to be your good friend, you wouldn't, I mean, but at the end, you're just like, I'm so glad she wrote that book about her.
That's the edited version of what she said about the
I'm trying to stay out of the blue here.
Well, and another, just real quick, another point that I want to kind of make about that is, are there characters who are unlikable because they're like that guy from Silence of the Lambs, or are there characters who are unlikable because they do bad things, but yet at the same time they have qualities that make you want to like them?
Well,
I mean,
that's a distinction that Masud didn't make. I mean,
Okay.
there are some characters who are, she writes a character who's just this whiny person all the time and would truly be annoying. But there are some characters who pretend to be unlikable, but who are likable.
right.
You know, I'm lost now trying to think of an example, but like, you know, with men characters, there's always a gruff, you know, a gruff, sarcastic, mean character is actually has a heart of gold.
Right.
That's a stock, unlikable, but actually likable character.
As soon as you said that, I thought of Inspector Blocka from Joe Abercrombie. That what's the name of the series?
First Law.
The First Law trilogy.
Right.
So I mean, again, I'm talking about a male character, but he's someone who does like these characters. He's the Inquisitor. He tortures people, but he's like my favorite character in the series, just because he's kind of endearing despite all of that.
Well, in Rosemary and Rue, there's a sea witch character that she's vile, but
Are you
she's
kidding?
bad.
I love her.
Don't you love
She is my favorite character.
supposed to, but she is, you know, she presents herself, she actually makes herself, she glamours herself to be hideous. Like she, you know, her house is filthy, and it's like, you know, when she's not keeping up the glamour, it's like the Ritz or something. Yeah.
Okay,
it's awesome.
you've tried twice to answer the question, then I'll get next.
There's a book, I think it's just an ebook, but it's by Carrie Caffrey called Girls from Albion. It's a science fiction book, but I think that will probably pass your test.
Okay.
It's actually an extremely good book.
And you said it was called Girls from Albion?
The Girls from Albion,
Okay.
ALCYON. And I believe she has another book that's coming out in the next few months.
What did you say the author's name was?
Carrie Caffrey,
Carrie McCaffrey.
fairly new writer.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm just wondering if any of you have read God's War, and if it's, and your thoughts on like a strong female character who, she's not just unlikable, she's a genuinely bad person. Like, the only reason she does anything vaguely heroic is because the bad people have screwed her, and she wants to get revenge on them for herself. And she's really strong, but she's a terrible person.
Yeah, it was called God's War, you said?
Yeah.
Does anyone know that?
Not.
Okay. Well, thank you for the recommendation.
I got a recommendation that I think passes the test. I have to reread the whole.
I know, you have to like think through the whole plot.
Yeah. It's the Jane Yellowrock series
Oh, yeah.
by Denise Hunter.
Well, she has that one witch friend.
Yeah.
In that one book.
Yeah, you know, part of it that's one of the things we had problems with. It's like, oh yeah, there's lots of books in a series, but maybe only one book somebody taught to another female.
Yeah.
Maybe she's maybe not the whole series actually gives that. Just one book in the series means that.
But that is a really good series. It's a really good
And
series.
it's called Jane Yellow Run?
Yeah, by Faith Hunter.
Okay, so then you and then you.
I was gonna say in the urban magic, I could kick to, one is Charles Dillon's The Onion Girl. I mean, that's just all strong women and more strong women, incredibly complex relationships and wonderful magic mixed in. And then kind of a little bit maybe over to the paranormal romance side would be the Night Huntress series by Janine Frost. She has a really complex relationship with her mom. And while there's a lot of guys in there and the men come and the men go and, you know, there's the whole romance thing, I think it does pass because of this whole very complex relationship she has with her mom.
Well, she has that girlfriend. I don't remember her name. The one that gets with
Frost?
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's a good one. And I actually remembered one for the one that didn't pass the test was Mistborn. I think Vin is an amazing character, but she's pretty much the only woman in like that whole book.
Okay, so last question, I think you over there.
I just have recommendations.
Okay.
We'll be at the table as well.
Yeah, we'll be at the table. Also, I posted a blog on the Denver Public Library website linking to our things. The 2 bookmarks that we did, we just made these. So the one with like the lady in the duster is for the adults, not like adult, but for adults. And then the second one, the first female character, just because I love alliteration, is the YFIC one. There's also some books for younger readers, so if you want some of those, that would be awesome. Okay, so thank you so much. We are going to be at the DPL table, and you guys are awesome.
And more panels.
And there's more DPL panels, but I forget what they are right now, so I'm freaking out.